So this is what Dr. Pidgeon and I really wanted to share with everybody today. There, we Cepher Academy is fairly new. Dr. Pidgeon has gotten it started. He is currently teaching a scriptural Ivrit for beginners. I've been taking the class, and when he comes on, he will share his heart with us about the class. But I just wanted to say, as a student, I have participated. I came into this Torah walk uh, around 2002. It began to dawn on me, and I started trying to understand the language. Now, here is a quote that was given. I heard Dr. Pidgeon give it on our last Hebrew class, and he said, as we study the Hebrew language, we take on Hebrew thought. The language itself is prophetic. And that is absolutely my experience with studying the Hebrew language. This is a living language that opens up the scriptures for us. So, our plans right now, currently, of course, we have the Hebrew class that we're already in. And what's great about the class is every class is recorded. All of the PowerPoint presentations and study materials are loaded. It's under here underneath resources when you take it. And you can just go back in. If you miss a class, you aren't able to catch the live teaching. And it's great because it is a live teaching done through a Zoom platform. And we're able to raise our hands, ask questions, ask for clarification. So it's a nice interactive atmosphere where you can bring your Hebrew questions straight to Dr. Pidgeon, and he takes the time to answer those for us. And so I am really enjoying it. He's giving me a whole different perspective, bringing it, like I said, I've been trying to, study the Hebrew now, since 2002. And I'm telling you what I have learned while studying with Dr. Pidgeon has just rocketed my understanding in a way that I never would have expected. He's pointing out things, he's dealing with fallacies, he's helping me clear away the clutter that had been there in my own study and help me get more to the truth of the matter, the heart of the matter. And that's always what I enjoy doing. Now, one of the things, and I hope that Dr. Pidgeon will share about this with us when he's able to join us, but he is planning to add a history class to the classes available. And you've heard him teach, right? It's going to be fascinating. I can hardly wait for the history class because I know when I began to homeschool my own child is when I found out that everything that I had learned about history came with such a slant, such a bias that it was just programming. It wasn't true history. And that is what, I want to undo. I had to undo that. When it became time for me to homeschool my daughter, she was already going into the 7th grade, and we had some learning difficulty things to overcome. And what we had to do, in fact, I have a video on my YouTube channel that really tells about that whole experience in our life because it was an amazing experience. And what I had to do when I started studying, I found out I had to really, let me stop sharing this for a moment. Sorry. What I found out was I had to relearn myself. I had to spend the whole summer, examining things and getting myself prepared to be her teacher. And, I spent that whole summer doing it. And what I realized was everything that I had been taught from a historical perspective was so slanted, so jaded, such programming. And I had a new education coming for myself. And that was back in 2001 when I started doing that. And, my daughter homeschools her 5 children today. And I am a big homeschool advocate. There is nothing like it. In fact, I want to mention, I do a lot of digging, but I'm not the most technologically talented person there is, right? So I was praying about this when Dr. Pidgeon approached me and said, would you like to teach the Otiot, the Paleo Hebrew class? And I said, well, absolutely. And then I went, oh boy, Father, are you going to have to teach me PowerPoint? I don't know how to do PowerPoint, and I'm not sure that I have time to get all my curriculum together and learn how to do PowerPoint, right? So that was my prayer. So here's how the Ruach works within the body. So you guys know from last Tuesday's show that Jessica Knock has really become a new friend of mine, and I am enjoying her friendship so much. And so she is a prayer warrior, and she was praying for me and contacted me and said, listen, there's a wonderful woman that I know who really has a heart to serve, that is extremely talented in making PowerPoint productions. Do you need help with that? Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing when we just bring our request unto him? One of my favorite scripture verses is when Yahuah, we are told, I believe it's in Peter. I believe it might be 1 Peter 5, but I don't have the reference exactly memorized. But here's the essence of the verse. Cast all your cares unto me, for I care for you. Right? And that's how Yahuah cares for us as our shepherd. He cares for us. And then by his Ruach, he works things out on our behalf. He whispers our needs and our private conversations with him into the ear of another part of the body, so that they already have the answer. And then they come back and say, here's an answer for you. Did you need this? I can't tell you how many times this has happened in my life. And just one more example, when I wanted to do a banner ministry, I didn't know how to sew a lick. I'd never sewed a thing in my life. I had gotten the football player next to me in my home ec class to make my patchwork pillow because I couldn't figure out the sewing machine, right? But then the Father lays on my heart a desire in a fine arts ministry he makes me a fine arts pastor in the church, and I am doing all kinds of presentations and pageantry, and I need banners made, but I don't know how to sew. And so he has one of my best girlfriends show up with a sewing machine. I didn't own a sewing machine. Show up with a sewing machine to my door and said, the Father told me that you have need of this. Is that right? And I did. And so I learned how to use the sewing machine. And then the next thing I know, here is a professional banner maker who comes to me and said, I've been doing this for a long time within the church. Would you like me to teach you how that's done? And so all her skills of 30 years of understanding exactly how to make these big, beautiful banners, she just shares with me freely. And I've been able to, put that into my ministry, and I've learned so much about that. So anyway, back to my story about the Paleo Hebrew. So I had prayed this, and Jessica Knock, says, I have a friend who's very talented. So I just want to give a shout out and say, Catherine Hood is amazing over in the UK. And she is the one who is producing. She's taking all my research and everything that I want to do for the class, and she's making it presentable. So it's a beautiful, unbelievable presentation. Not because of my talent, but because of the talent of Kat. So thank you, Kat. And you have no idea what a blessing you are. So I want to share with you a little bit about what I am going to be teaching in the class. So let me see if I'm talented enough to share my screen again. Let me get rid of that one. All right. Let's see here where I am at. All right. I think I have it. I'm going to add this back to the stream so you guys can see it. Okay, so what I'm going to be teaching is, of course, called the Otiot. And Otiot is the Hebrew word for letters. One letter is called an oat, and it's pronounced like if you were going to have some oatmeal, right? Oat. Oat means sign. So multiple letters are referred to as the otiot, which is plural and means signs. So here's what we'll be really looking at. The Hebrew letters, of course, this is what it looks like in the modern script. Now, this does not have the Masoretic vowel pointings. I've just got the Aleph and the Tav here. And now when we go down here, this is what is called the Paleo script. And so you see this here with the Aleph and the Tav. And then we come down to what's called the pictographs. There's the Aleph, the ox head, and the Tav. Okay. So one reference that I love, in case you're looking for references, this particular book has been around for as long as I have been studying this. It's called Hebrew Word Pictures by Frank Seekins. In this, he gives all the examples of the different types of script. And so he really takes you through when you're looking at this. Let me see if I'm getting a good picture. So you can kind of see there, he's given you all the different examples, of how this is done. So I just wanted to mention that I believe I had found this on Amazon. Of course, it's been a long time, so, I have no idea, but it is called Hebrew Word Pictures by Frank T. Seekins. So this is just an all-time old reference of mine that I've been studying out of for 20 years. Another one that I really like a lot. Let me grab it here. Of course, this one's really good. It's rather technical. I haven't been through all of it, but Jeff Brenner, he's got a site too, and there's just an amazing amount of information in here. So I am also gleaning from this book. I have found some resources that I will be sharing on the class about where you can find and print out your own Hebrew flashcards. And so I will be sharing that. In fact, to this introductory video for the audience, I always end up adding this particular presentation to my own YouTube site, which is Heart of the Tribe. So I'm going to put some links so that everybody who watches this will have the ability to find where these flashcards are. And I'll also link the books that I referenced. If I can find them on Amazon, I will do that also. So you'll be able to enjoy those, even if you're not able to take the class. Okay. And another book that I am really enjoying is this particular one. Now, I had Dr. Monzo on not long ago, and I believe, after listening to his presentation, after praying about it, after studying all of this, I believe that really the Ruach has downloaded a program that is going to be absolutely so imperative for the body of Yahusha during this time, when we see that probably as the persecution continues, as the tyranny continues, as we do not line up with what they're trying to push on us, we're probably going to have an alternative answer for our health care. And I just believe that this is what, the Father has given to one of his faithful servants, Dr. Monzo, to put in a over 400 page reference manual, so that we will understand the actual energy medicine, the negative and positive polarity that Yahuah put within each of our hands. He explained on his presentation that, the electricity running through our body, but that we will have, when we lay on hands and are a conduit for the power of the Ruach to flow through us and touch others, that this is understanding, wisdom, knowledge, revelation given right here in a manual. And I am finding it absolutely incredible, as I study through. And so I'm using this also as a reference manual for my class. I'm gaining tons of information out of that. So, okay, I want to keep going on here. Oh, let me mention one more thing for the class that I'm going to be doing. In fact, I might mention two. And then I want to just do a little bit of teaching. So one other reference that I am going to have available for the class is I have come up with, I typed up, I'll have 3 links available that show you where to download the modern Hebrew font, the Paleo Hebrew font, and the Pictograph font. Now, Kat's let me know that when she tried to download the modern, it didn't necessarily work for her. I've had it on my computer forever. I've transferred it from computer to computer to computer to computer. So I didn't have to try that one. She did try it and said that that particular one isn't working. But she said that the Paleo and the Pictograph is working wonderful for her. And that's what I'm going to be studying on. So I hope that that ends up being really helpful for you. So what I took the time to do is I made up what's called, I call it my keyboard chart, because you download the font, but then you got to figure out, well, what letter on my keyboard corresponds to it, right? So I have produced for us a keyboard chart so that once you download the fonts, you will easily know how you can type this into your own document. So I hope that that is a great blessing. One of the other things that we're going to do in my class, because if you've ever watched any of my teaching, you know I probably do things different than anybody. I'm creative, you know, and that's just how I think. I think differently. So number one, we're going to study the Hebrew in a chiastic pattern, which means we're going to start on the very first class with the letters Kaf and Lamed, and then we're going to work our way out, and we're going to look for the connections as they flow in that chiastic pattern. Why do I do this? I do this because I raised a daughter with dyslexia, and I have found that the way that we conquered her dyslexia is we challenged the brain in a lot of different ways. Now, Dr. Pidgeon is teaching his class in order, Aleph through Tav, which is fabulous, and I love it. But I'm just going to present something a little different, and we're going to start at the heart of it, and we're going to work our way out. And one of the things that we're going to do is in each class, there are in the Brit Hadashah, 22 times here. I'll just read it for you out of the document I'll be sharing on the class. It says the word mystery appears 22 times in the Brit Hadashah, and the word mysteries appears 5 times in the Brit Hadashah. So I've listed them in the order in which they appear, along with the 5 sophites in the modern Hebrew at the end of the list. It is our job as a class to study the passage and see if we see a connection between the letter meaning and the parable. Like the parable, the mystery, right? Do some of them need to be rearranged? Can we gain an understanding of the mystery by looking at the pictograph of the letter? So that I will be challenging the class with, and we'll pick what I believe, you know, maybe corresponds to what we're studying that week. But you'll have the whole document as soon as you are part of the class, so that you can also be studying that, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end of each class in order to discuss that as a group. Not a long time, but a little bit of time to share. Okay, so what we can see I'm going to start what I wanted to share with you today, that Yahuah has designed the Hebrew so that every word can be broken down to its 2 or 3 letter root. The meaning of the word can be seen in the meanings of the letter that form the word. What we call the alphabet consists of the 22 letters that Yahuah used to sing the universe into existence. The Aleph, Tav are the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. We are going to be working our way through the book of Zephaniah to examine word themes and their relationship to other passages in Scripture to see if the context of these scriptures gives us a double or triple witness to establish the paleo word picture meaning. It's my goal to communicate the study habits that are conducive to mining for treasure in the scriptures. So knowing that, here's what I wanted to just start with, really as kind of an introduction to this class today. So in Zephaniah, Zephaniah 3:8. What's really interesting when you look at this verse in the Hebrew, and I found this out from Brad Scott. Boy, did Brad Scott give us treasures to mine when he was with us. But he shared this with me and pointed it out in one of his teachings. I don't mean like me personally, but in his teachings that I studied, that in Zephaniah 3:8, every single Hebrew letter is in that, including the 5 Sephits. So what does this say? Therefore, wait ye upon me, says Yahuah, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them my indignation. Well, what is that? This is like the world beast system that is assembling right now before our eyes. We are definitely living in this day, right? Until I pour upon them my indignation, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. So this is what's taking place, right? This is all setting up right now as I'm speaking. And then he says, and so then what's going to happen? For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahuah to serve him with one consent. All right, so let's dig into that for a minute. What in the world does this mean? So we've got this, a pure language, right? So here's the word in the pictographic language. We have a bet, resh, resh. Here it is when I took it off of eSword, and this does have the Masoretic vowel pointings, but what we see is a bet, a resh, and a resh, barar. And so what do we know from Brown Driver Briggs about this particular word? It means to purify, select, polish, choose, purge, cleanse, make bright, test, or prove, to purge out, purify, make it shining, to polish it, right? To polish the arrows, to show oneself pure, just, and it is a verb, so it's an action word. All right, so now what's the word for language? Here it is in our pictographic language. We've got the shin, the pei, and the tav. Okay. And then over here, Brown Driver Briggs and Strong's gave me 2 possible spellings for the word. So now we also have it in the pictographic with Cepher. So we have the shin, the pei, and the hey, right? Which is like the breath. Behold, right? So what do we see this in language? We've got, the waters, right? The waters. Okay. That's the mem. I'm sorry, sheen. I am so sorry. I'm getting myself confused because they both kind of have this up and down. So the sheen, we've got right here, when something is consumed, right? Consumption of speech. Behold. Consumption of our words leading to a covenant, to the sign of the covenant. Okay. So I find this very interesting. So this refers to our lip, language, speech, sure, right? Right there, you can see all that. Okay. This is part of speech, a noun, feminine. Okay. All right. So what I wanted to talk to you about is on my YouTube channel, I've been doing a series called Preparing for Pesach. And as I've gone through this series, what I have noticed is I'm using the book of Jasher to do this. So this is what I've learned, and this is why I think this is important and prophetic about studying the pictographic language at this point in time. In the story of Jasher, and if you want all the backup, just go to my YouTube channel and you'll see all this. I've explained it in detail. I've gone line by line through the story of Jasher, and actually I'm continuing to do so. I'm not even quite to what I'm going to explain to you today. I'm really kind of jumping ahead in my series, but I've been reading ahead and making my notes, and here's what I've learned. In the story of Jasher, we can follow the life of Mosheh. He was saved out of the midst of being cast upon the waters. Okay, I just did a part in that in my explanation showing where Balaam was trying to say, hey, let's try throwing the babies into the water, right? To see if we can defeat them that way, because that's never been tried. But Moshe was then saved out of the waters, right? I think that they forgot that Noah was also saved out of the waters. Okay, so he was saved out of the midst of being cast upon the water. He was raised as a royal prince in the household of Pharaoh. he had identity questions as a young man. Okay. I really relate to that. I lost my father at an early age, and was adopted. And it brings a lot of questions in those teenage years of trying to work out your identity. So I really understand that. So as he's going and, really starting to get in touch with what his familiar roots were, he, is going and visiting Goshen, and he sees the abuse coming on his people by an Egyptian. And he's so angry that he murders him. I can tell you, justified anger is the most dangerous type of anger, because we can talk ourselves into saying that it's okay to take vengeance upon things. It's a really dangerous emotion, and it's one that right now we need to be extremely aware of, so that the enemy does not use that against us to entrap us. Okay, so he murders this Egyptian. He's immediately hunted by Pharaoh. So what does Yahuah do? He sends an angel to pick him up, transport him to the land of Cush, 40 days distance from Egypt. There he ends up serving as the king of Cush for 40 years. After that period, they say, we don't need you to be our king anymore. He goes to the land of Midian and meets Jethro, who later becomes his father-in-law. And Jethro throws him into prison for 10 years. Okay, he's ministered to by Zipporah and given sustenance while in prison. Later, she becomes his wife. Now, Yithro, we know from the book of Jasher, and I've just been covering this in my last videos. He had been one of the counselors of Pharaoh. Okay. And his advice when they were trying to figure out, all of our persecution measures are not working. What can we do in order to get rid of these Hebrew people? Right. So Jethro's advice to Pharaoh was, listen, the best thing you could do is let them go, because you don't understand who their Elohim is. He will defeat you. He will defend his people. And so Pharaoh, of course, was outraged by that advice. And who was listening to that advice but Balaam and Job, actually, who were also counselors? Well, what happens is Yithro had to flee. But before he fled Egypt, he took the rod of Joseph with him to Midian. Okay, there is no accidents. It's just like what I was explaining before. When we have a need, Yah already has an answer. It's amazing the way that he works. All right, so going back to Moses. So what happens to him, once he's out of the prison, he's then content to keep the flocks of the sheep, and he's been greatly humbled by his experience and his time, because he had been trained in the ways of Egypt in order to be part of the royal household and lead and guide the people in the ways of Egypt, but not in the ways of Yahuah. All right, so he's being taught how to lead because Yah makes him a shepherd to take care of sheep, right? And then he's called into service. He sees Yah in the burning bush, right, at 80 years of old. And his response to Yah is, who shall I say sent me? All right, let me advance this. Okay, so this is his response. Okay, and Moshe answered and said, this is Exodus 4, 1-5. And Moshe answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, Yahuah has not appeared unto you. And Yahuah said unto him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a rod. It was the rod of Joseph. And he said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moshe fled from before it. And Yahuah said unto Moshe, put forth your hand and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they may believe that Yahuah Elohai of their fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzhak, and the Elohai of Yaakov has appeared unto you. He's saying, I have given you my rod of authority, just like I gave it to your forefathers. So important, right? And he says, well, then who shall I say sent me, right? And then he says, and Yah says, tell him I am sent you, right? And so he gives him his name. Tell him that the great I am sent you, the only one who is the creator of all, that sang creation into existence with the language of Hebrew, of Ivrit. Okay, so then in Exodus 6, verse 30, and Moshe said before Yahuah, behold, I am of uncircumcised lips, and how shall Pharaoh hearken unto me? So here's where we get our connection to the pure language. So what is he saying? Right there, he's saying, I'm of uncircumcised lips. That word uncircumcised is arel in the Hebrew. Here's the pictograph. So we've got the all-seeing eye, right, of Egypt. Okay. Here we have man's thoughts, man's way, and a rod of authority. He says, the only authority I have, Yah, this is what he was saying when he said, I'm of uncircum lips. The only authority that I have is what I know from my experience in Egypt. How in the world can I be a leader unto you? Right? He says, I have uncircumcised lips. Here's the word for lips. We've got Safa and Sefet. Okay, so here's the first one, Safa. We've got the sheen, the pay for speak, right? And then we've got behold. And so this is this one for lips, right? So we've got, a destruction, a consumption of speech. Hey, behold. All right. We've got a consumption of a destructive force. All right. Or something that consumes the words that lead to a covenant, right? Very interesting. So let's just compare that, as we're trying to puzzle out, what does this pictograph mean? Let's turn to Brown Driver Briggs and see if we can find something, right? So we have here the definition: language, speech, shore, bank, brim, side, edge, border, binding. Lip is a part of the body. Language. All right, this isn't telling us a whole lot. So what do we do to try to figure out the meaning of this? So we search the scriptures, and here's what we find in Ezekiel 3, verses 4 through 8. And he said unto me, son of Adam, go get you unto the house of Yasharel, and speak with my words unto them. For you are not sent to a people of strange speech and of a hard language, but to the house of Yasharel. He's saying, I'm not sending you to teach the world this, to deliver the world. I am teaching you this to deliver the household of Yasharel, right? This is so important. Not to many people of a strange speech and of a hard language whose words you cannot understand. Surely, had I sent you to them, they would have hearkened unto you. He's like, really? And it's so funny. Lindley Oz and I, we were talking about this, and there's been a lot of talk between on our conversations between me and her and Jessica. We've really fostered a friendship that, it's harder to get people who think they know in that religious mindset to hear you than those who say, I don't know, teach me, that have a humble spirit, that say, I don't know anything about religion. It's easier to get them to understand. So not to many people of a strange speech and a hard language whose words you can understand. Surely had I sent you unto them, they would have hearkened unto you. But the house of Yasharel will not hearken unto you, for they will not hearken unto me. For all the house of Yasharel are impudent and hard-hearted. Behold, I have made your face strong against their faces, and your forehead strong against their foreheads, right? And as an adamant, harder than flint have I made your forehead. Fear them not, neither be dismayed by their looks, though they be a rebellious house. There's not, he also told Moshe this. He had to tell it to Ezekiel. This is what Yah's word always is to his prophets. Don't be affected by the faces and the reaction of the rebellious house. It may take a while for things to sink in for them, but don't let it sway you off your purpose, right? Okay, so what was he saying? These people have strange language, okay? Strange or hard language. So what do we see here? We've got the word amek for a strange language. It's unintelligible speech. It's like gibberish in Yah's ears. He's like, I'm not listening to this, because it's speaking the mind of the world beast system, right? We saw that earlier in the word, the uncircumcised lip, the strange language. Here again, we've got the ayin, the mem, and the kuf. And so what do we know about those words? I'm sorry, I kind of ran out of time and I didn't have time to put it on this presentation. But here, this ayin, again, we have the all-seeing eye. So let me see if I can just show you. So we've got the ayin, right? And then we have the mem, the chaos of the waters, right? And then we've got a kuf. What's behind you, right? The sun on the horizon. What's behind you? So he's saying, this strangeness is something, it produces chaos that's better left behind, right? It's unintelligible. Okay, now on to the word hard. We've got kabed. So we have a cough, a bet, a dalet. Another way of saying that many times is kavod, okay, which we know for glory. I'm going to be going over that in actually my first class. We're going to dig deep into that word. But it also in this meaning can mean heavy, great, heavy. All right. It means difficult or burdensome. It's a burdensome language. Okay, so it's something that is very oppressive. So we know that it's not coming from Yah. So what do we see here? Let me just read you this one passage out of Ezekiel, and that is out of Ezekiel 33, starting in verse 13. When I shall say to the righteous that he shall surely live, if he trust to his own righteousness and commit iniquity, all his righteousness shall not be remembered, but for his iniquity that he has committed, he shall die for it. Again, when I say unto the wicked, you shall surely die, if he turn from his sin and do that which is lawful and right, if the wicked restore the pledge, give again that he had robbed, walk in the statutes of life without committing iniquity, he shall surely live and not die. What's he talking about? Repentance is open to all. This is what he's saying. None of his sins that he has committed shall be mentioned unto him. He has done that which is lawful and right. He shall surely live. Boy, doesn't this apply to the life of Job? We really saw that, right? Yet the children of your people say, the way of Adonai is not equal, but as for them, their way is not equal. When the righteous turns from his righteousness and commits iniquity, he shall even die thereby. All right, looks like Dr. Pidgeon is getting ready to join us in just a moment. So I'll finish up this passage and then I'll be bringing Dr. Pidgeon in. All right, when the righteous turns from his righteousness and commits iniquity, he shall even die thereby. But if the wicked turn from his wickedness and do that which is lawful and right, he shall live thereby. Yet ye say, the way of Yahuah is not equal. O ye house of Yasharel, I will judge you every one after his ways. And it came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, in the 10th month, in the 5th day of the month, that one that had escaped out of Jerusalem came unto me, saying, the city of smitten. Now the hand of Yahuah was upon me in the evening, afore he was escaped came, and he had opened my mouth until he came to me in the morning, and my mouth was open, and I was no more dumb. And that is what the crux of it is. When we learn to speak the Ivrit, when we are in union with him, we get the pure language and we can partner with him, and it is prophetic and it is powerful. And that was what I wanted to share with you today. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to welcome Dr. Pidgeon. Dr. Pidgeon, welcome. I have so far today shared our Cepher Academy website so that everybody could see where the Hebrew class that you are currently teaching is taking place. I have shared our plans to let them know that you're planning on teaching a history class and that you're going to talk about that for a moment. And I've shared what my vision and plan is for the Paleo Hebrew class. So I am all done and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Well, fantastic, Shelley. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about the delay. We had an emergency broadcast we were doing in Washington concerning the events of the day, which maybe we can talk about after we get through with this. But yeah, fantastic. And of course, that the academy, where Cepher Academy is concerned, there's a lot of things happening. I mean, our Hebrew class yesterday, we're just going through the Aleph Beit, right? pretty simple formula, right? Pretty simple formula, but not really, because I was, I really had a blast during that teaching session yesterday, because guess what? We're only 4 letters in, and yet people are beginning to think with a Hebraic mind.
Mm.
And this is what teaching the Paleo Hebrew is really but kind of foundational, because part of this idea is, and we learn also not only the Paleo, but where the Paleo is consistent with the Aramaic block script Hebrew, in that each letter has meaning, right? Each letter conveys its own story. And sometimes we think we know what that is. And like, for instance, yesterday we were talking about the Dalet, and the Dalet means the door. Well, does it mean the door? And it actually means more like the porthole or the entrance, right? The portal or the entrance, the gate, if you will. But it's not really the door. It's that part where you were outside, now you're inside, right? So I was talking about it with my wife. We were talking about what happened at the end of the meeting, and about how we looked at this word, that they tell you is hedom, but that is, once again, a Masoretic pronunciation,
Right.
hedom, right? And when we look closely at it, we find out that he is probably a prefix to the word dam. And of course, dam being blood, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to give away the whole mystery now, because I'm actually going to do an extensive teaching on that issue. In fact, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about it tonight when we talk about the seasons. We're going to talk a little bit about that particular issue, because that verse has been so misused. Oh, can you see my dog back there?
I can. Mine's down here too.
Yeah. She's hanging out with me today. She used to be a little tiny puppy, but she isn't anymore. But
Yeah.
but anyway, but so I'm talking with Stephanie about it. We're talking about this Dam, right? The Dalet Mem. Well, what does this mean? What does this imply? Well, the Dalet being the portal, right? Now, Mem is, you have 2 forms. You have the regular Mem, and then you have the Sophite, right? And in the regular Mem, there's a little opening. This is Aramaic block script, not Paleo. There's a little opening at the bottom, right? But on the Mem Sophite, it's completely closed. It's completely closed, right? Okay, so this has its own implications because this is talking about, Mayim is water, right? And Mem, the letter of this letter Mem is very similar. And when you put the 2 of them together, well, guess what? The Mem also means the womb, right? Okay, so what this is telling us is that the womb, when you talk about the word dam, meaning blood, it tells us that the womb is the portal. So I asked my wife, where is blood initiated, right? It's in the womb at the point of conception.
Mm-hmm.
That all of a sudden, you have the egg is conceived, and when the egg is conceived, there's a flash of light.
Right.
And when there's this flash of light, guess what? There's this flash of light, and then blood begins to be generated, right? Blood cells begin to generate, and it's a unique blood type, sometimes consistent with the mother, but oftentimes not. It's a unique blood type that begins to generate. And so, as Leviticus 17:11 says, the life of the soul is in the blood. It's in the blood, right?
Yeah.
So what do you see when you talk about this word dam, meaning blood? It really means that the womb is the portal. The womb is the portal, right?
It's amazing.
Isn't
Amazing.
that?
I know. I just want to let you know we have about 10 minutes. Just so you know.
All right, I guess
we're only an hour show today, so we only have about 10 minutes, just so you know, but I want you to run with whatever you want to share for that 10 minutes about your classes.
Well, I just have to tell you, this is exciting. And when we do the history, we're going to be looking at the comparative history between the Torah and Enoch and Jubilees and Jasher. And we're going to be looking at those. We're going to go through those timelines comparatively with each other. And we're also going to be kind of figuring out the timelines. When did these things happen?
Amazing.
Like to give you an example, Shelley, when you take the 430 years, right? There's a passage in Exodus that says it was exactly on this very same day, right, which was the 14th day of the first month, that the sojourning began, right? That the sojourning began. Well, when did this sojourning begin? Because when you go back and you look at the years and you start adding that up, you don't get 430 years in Egypt. You get 430 years from the day that Abraham left Haran.
Wow.
And he left Haran, according to that testimony, on the 14th day of the first month when he was instructed to leave. And so you see him wandering into Shechem, and then down to Hebron, and then down into Mitzrayim, and then back into Philistia and Gaza, and then back to Hebron, and this stuff goes back and forth. But you see, he's a stranger in a strange land, right? Hager, the stranger.
Yes, the stranger.
Right?
The foreigner.
The foreigner, yeah. And so here he is, stranger in a strange land. So when we begin to talk about this, the history that emerges, particularly when you integrate Jasher. Now, I think that was that your post that you put up on? Oh no, that was Tina's post to put up on Abraham out of Jasher.
Mm-hmm.
But
I've done a video on that too on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's incredible, and we've talked about some of the other elements of Jasher, like in terms of like Jasher 10, telling about where these different tribes were and how they were populated around Europe, really from ancient history. So once we begin to understand that, we can begin to trace the tribes, where the tribes went, and we see that we're going to get some very serious illustration. And there's some things in Jasher that are just enormous, because you get into this discussion about Zepho. Well, who's the Zepho guy, right? No other scripture talks about this Zepho guy. And if Jasher was a fabrication or a fiction, why would they bring this guy up? And especially since he's not particularly historically relevant to the modern dialogue, right? Because he presupposed Rome. But this Zepho and Ai, the king Ai, right? These names become really critically important. And when you understand a bit about Egyptian hieroglyphics, which you can if you read the book Cumuloglyphics by Ross Broadstock that we sell on the website. I mean, that book is so simple, right?
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, that's available at www.cepher.net underneath resources.
Yeah, and that book is so simple. And then you read it, and it's like, you're kidding. It's that easy to read the hieroglyphs, the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Yeah, it is when you apply it to the right language. And so all of a sudden, boom, you can create your own cartouche and on and on and on. And you have the opportunity for the first time, with a good review of the dictionary that's at the back of that, to be able to look at Egyptian hieroglyphs and see what it says yourself.
Amazing.
Right. And so now, because of that, we find out that people had different names, just as we find Yahuah as the name and Elohim as his title. So you have a root name here, and then you have an Egyptian name, and then you have the title of your office in Egyptian. Three different things. That's why Scripture tells us Joseph had a different name in Egypt, right? He was called something different in Egypt, as was Moses. Anyway, these kinds of things are really going to kind of open things up, and you're going to go, oh, okay. Well, I was always taught that the Egyptian Empire went down the Nile River. No, the Egyptian Empire included the British Isles.
Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing. I've been, of course, teaching out of Jasher, doing a series called Preparing for Pesach. And one of the questions I got, I was showing how Job was one of the counselors to Pharaoh, and counseling what would, how to defeat the children. And so I got a question on my YouTube channel. How do we know this is the same Job?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. And, I'll tell you something. A lot of that has to do with the transliteration of the name. You see, because I can tell you that we transliterate the name Job as Eov, right? Eov. That is assuming that when you look at that Eov, that you're talking about this idea of this Yod Vav, right? Eov. Right. But I can tell you that there is another character that appears in Scripture called Yavav. Okay. And Yavav may be the same person as Job. Yavav. Okay. Now we start talking about Yavav. Is this Job that appears in Jasher the same Job? Is the Balaam that appears in Jasher as the father of Jannes and Jambres
Right.
The same Balaam, that was advising Balak,
Balak. Hmm.
right? Is it the same person? Are Jannes and Jambres that withstood Moses there in Jasher the same Jannes and Jambres referred to by Paul?
Right.
I mean, these are questions, right? And of course, there is a question. How do we know? Well, we know by doing further research.
Hmm.
That's how we know. And this is why Cepher Academy, we want to offer a panoply of services, Shelley, including your teaching. I'm hoping that John Reed Austin is going to come on and teach the Masorot, right?
Hmm.
Because it is time for the children of Yah to understand the stars in the heavens. I mean,
Absolutely.
Shelley, I don't know how much time we have left, but I got to tell you, I was jumping up and down with excitement last night. I was at my daughter's house, my son-in-law's house, and we were talking about what I discovered for part of tonight's presentation concerning the constellations, right? And I'll just give you a little precursor. Well, he says, well, I have this app that you download because he used to work in Australia. And he
Uh-huh.
says, I was just blown away in Australia. I saw all these constellations I'd never seen before. And I really wanted to see the Southern Cross. And so he downloaded this app, this free app on his phone. And you can take this app and you can point it out at the sky and it tells you what the constellations are, right?
I have that on my phone. I do that a lot.
That thing is really fun. Okay,
It
so
is.
last night I'm looking for the Big Dipper, right? Ursa Major. And I finally find Ursa Major straight up, right over my head, right? And this is why, and Ursa Major is always in the Alaskan sky. That's why it's on the Alaskan flag, because it's always in the Alaskan sky. 365 days a year, it's in the Alaskan sky.
I can find it every night here in North Carolina too.
Yeah, because it's a far north, right?
Yeah.
But one of the constellations that we were watching was Virgo. Now, on this particular app, there's a red line across the app. So when you look at the constellation, you can determine whether or not you can see that in the sky or not. Well, you point the thing down. Okay, that's not visible in the sky. That's beneath the horizon. You can't see it, right? Well, here's Virgo, and I'm looking closely at Virgo. And if you look closely at the image of Virgo, you'll see in her left hand, she's holding a sheaf of what appears to be wheat,
Wheat.
but is actually barley. But she's
Wow.
holding this sheaf of barley, and in that left hand is this star called Spica. And I'm looking, and Spica is below the horizon. Why is Spica below the horizon? Because we haven't yet reached the axial tilt when Spica is going to be above the horizon. And when Spica becomes above the horizon, guess what? The wave offering is in hand.
Wow. This is just revolutionary. I wish we had another hour, but you know what? This is good. If people now know that this is going to be astounding classes and information. I mean, really unparalleled by what else is out there and available. I'm taking every class. I just am so excited. So, I hope that, audience, that you will come and join us at cepheracademy.net. And I promise you will more than get your money's worth out of these classes.
Well,
It's
I'm glad you
amazing.
say it, Shelley. And listen. I'm really looking forward to you coming on board with the class, and I'm looking forward to John Reed Austin showing up too. He's got a lot to present on the Masorot. A good study guide for that is the E.W. Bullinger, A
Right?
Witness to the Stars.
I have that one.
That's a free download. You can download it and print it. It's a good study guide for you. At least get you, adept in the 80 visible constellations, right, that are
Yes.
above us, and you can begin to understand, for instance, the summer constellations versus the winter constellations. Why there are fixed constellations in the northern sky and in the southern sky. Why the constellations in the north circle clockwise and why they circle counterclockwise in the south. There's a
Amazing.
reason. There's a reason.
Absolutely. You and I know maybe it has something to do with the shape of the earth. I can't help it. You know me, I'm always willing to stir the pot just a tad. All right. Well, I am so glad you came able to come and join us for a little bit today. And unfortunately for today, our time is up. So I know you and I are going to stick around for a minute and have a discussion after the show. but and get some details smoothed out. But audience, I would just want to thank you. I hope you'll come and visit us at www.cepheracademy.net. And also please visit the website for your resources, www.cepher.net. There, just check out the blog session. If you don't want to spend money, just go to the blogs underneath resources. There's over 300 things. You can print them. This is what I've done. They're in notebooks, and I have them tabbed and referenced and typed up a table of contents for them because they are that valuable. All right. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we will see you next time. Shalom.
Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
Head in the sand, watching the time just ticking. Clock runs around, days in and out, can't really call it living. Somewhere I let light go dark, but here's where my new story starts.